Hey guys, this is Matt and Mike from the 4x4 Ranch, and we thought we'd show you some video we took when we were at the Bronco Off Roadeo in Austin, Texas this spring. So the thing that I thought was really cool right away was that I've only seen a couple Broncos in real life ever, and I'd never seen another two-door Bronco other than the one I own. So to be able to come here and see all these Broncos, it was just amazing to be surrounded by so many trucks that are so hard to get right now.
I see a lot of these have soft tops on them. How was your experience with that?
Loving it. They had factory soft tops and best top soft tops on some of them, so it's cool to get that experience. This part of the trail was cool. They started out saying, hey, we want to make sure we're treading lightly. And so here's an example where we're going through water and then we're going up a really steep incline that's all mud. Or it could be mud, just dirt, and they don't want to dig this up because we want to make sure we're taking care of our trails. And so they had everybody lock front and rear axles as they went up this, just to make sure we didn't do any more damage to the trail than we'd have to. Then we could unlock it and go farther down the trail. So it's kind of cool to be able to be thinking about those types of things as we start trail riding.
So did you feel any slippage going up this?
No, we got great traction. I think it was lucky it was really dry when we were there. There was a lot of times when the water would have been a lot deeper, or if it had been raining, I think that would have been a pretty difficult descent. This is a great example of what most of the trails there looked like as we were driving between obstacles. Very rustic, pretty dry, not too difficult though. Now this it's kind of hard to tell, but we're going up a pretty significant incline here. It's loose gravel, loose rock, and there's some big ruts in there. You can kind of see the blue Bronco going through. He kind of went around it a little bit, but that would definitely make the Broncos lift the tires. So you had to really pick the right line or get your lockers on if you're going to make it up this.
And this is where it's nice not having your own Bronco in case you get a little too close to a tree.
Exactly, yeah. That scratch was there before we started this. So here's where you really can see, if you look at the video, it's rutted really bad right there. And the first time I went up this, I locked the rear axle and was able to get up it fairly easy. This time I was able to pick a better line, so I didn't lift a tire and was able to drive it without having to lock the axles. So
was that the house you were staying at?
I wish. Nice house right in the middle of this place. It used to be a skeet facility for skeet shooting, and now they're using it for the Bronco Off Roadeo. This is kind of cool. We come over the crest here and you can see what it looked like. We had a row of Broncos. I was the last Bronco in this group, and so you can see all the Broncos ahead of us just kind of spaced out going down the trail. It was always fun to just be in the group and be able to watch that. We had the top down, so we were able to put the camera up and get away from the dusty windshield sometimes too.
And how far was this place from a regular town? Or any town, I should say.
This was, I think it was a 10-minute drive from a big resort, a really nice resort that we were at. So this obstacle was a pretty steep, go up a short rock and then go back down the other side. And if you listen, he hits he bottoms out pretty good as he's going over that because it's fairly steep up. It's not very tall. You get great traction because it's kind of sandstone. But then you go back down the other side and it's pretty easy to drag. I was in a two-door Bronco, so I was much less likely to drag on that particular obstacle.
And the people Ford had out here spotting, were they running from obstacle to obstacle, or were they jumping in with people, or how do they get around?
They were riding along. So they had one person that would ride in the front vehicle and one person that would typically ride in the back, but I was the back vehicle and I was a two-door, so they didn't want to climb in the back seat. In this case right here, he actually had me stop, and he was just really impressed. He's like, you can stop on this steep incline, and it was about a 20-degree incline, and then we had plenty of traction. You can see it's 21 degrees, it looks like there. We had a lot of traction, and the torque converter is pretty tight on that, so it's very easy to have a lot of control even when you're going up a pretty significant hill. But really some rough areas of rock. It was kind of sandstone type rock, so this was a lot like what you'd find out in Moab or something like that. Another obstacle that we went through, there's actually two obstacles back to back here, this one and the next one, that weren't horrible if you drove real smooth and got the right line, but definitely not something you'd take your average car up, so they were a little more challenging obstacles than I thought. This one was probably the hardest obstacle, at least going uphill, that we were on. They had us lock. Normally we tried to take it without locking an axle first, but he had me lock the rear axle right away on this one.
Was this another spot where the four doors were bellying out, or is this not quite as quick of a drop afterwards?
No, this one's a little bit smoother, so I don't think that they were scraping too bad, but it was really all about keeping your speed under control and maintaining a little bit of momentum so that you didn't stop, because once you stopped, trying to get started again was pretty difficult. The wheelbase of the four-door, I think, helped a little bit in that particular obstacle.
It looked like there, too, it had a tough time wiping the smile off your face.
A little bit, yeah. We were having a great time. Now, this one, I tried to pick my own line on this, and I didn't do as great of a job as I could have. It's the first time I'd really seen the obstacle, and I pulled into a spot where I ended up getting in some ruts that the people in front of me had really dug up. So I had both lockers open, and I really wanted to be able to drive out of this, so I was trying to see if I could get enough traction, turn the wheels back and forth, see if I could grab traction. I was kind of two-footing it a little bit. Didn't work out very well. You can see here I reach forward and lock in the front axle. In hindsight, that is probably a bad idea, because as I locked in the front axle, you can see it starts spinning both tires, and then I start sliding sideways, which I realized right away and thought, well, that isn't what I'm trying to do. So then I stopped, locked in the rear axle, and of course with all four locked, I was able to drive up it relatively smoothly.
So do you have any idea what type of tire pressure they were running on all these out here?
24 PSI was about where the tires ran. So they all had tire lights on them because we were running with low pressures.
Low pressure, but nothing really low.
Not crazy low, because there's no bead locks or anything on it, and those factory tires are pretty soft sidewall. Now this is a really steep decline. We hit 26 degrees down when we were going down this, and there's a lot of rocks that you would either hit on the belly or kind of slide the tires over. What they had us do is put it in the trail control, the cruise control, and set it at 1 mile an hour, and then you just let it take care of the speed, and you just had to make sure you're driving it carefully. This does not show the intensity of going down this hill, because as you go over some of the rocks, boy, it'd slide for 3 feet, and you just hope that it'd stop sliding.
Yeah, it's bad. The camera just never gives you this perspective of how steep or how sideways you are.
Yeah, you don't get the feel like you do in real life, but it was a pretty steep decline, and it wasn't too bad when you were able to make sure that you had good control of your speed. That was the big thing, is you didn't want to let that get out of control or get a little kittywampus on the trail.
They should probably put up a pedestrian crossing sign there.
Yeah, I was the last person in the group, and so everybody else parked and got out to watch us, so they were able to do that.
A nice little rock garden here.
Yeah, rock garden was pretty loose, and as you go through this, there's a couple really big rocks that we had to get in between. So it was kind of trying to find a line through without hitting the stuff that was just too tall that was going to scrape up the body. Not super difficult, but definitely fun. The two doors had a lot easier time getting through this because the shorter wheelbase made it a little bit easier to maneuver. And
but also make that turn. Looks like a pretty sharp turn there.
A pretty good turn on it, and then of course we were bottoming out here and there, hitting the skid plates, but it wasn't ever too bad. Lots of loose rock.
Just enjoying watching the instructors telling you to go because it's not their vehicle either.
Yeah, they didn't worry about it too much. Yeah, nobody had to worry too much about damaging a vehicle because we had insurance.
Yeah, it looks like they just let you go for the most part. No one's in the cab with you. No one's getting too close, letting you kind of do your thing, experiencing.
No, they had one person, he'd ride with, or the guides would ride with to get to the next spot, but they weren't. They were letting us kind of drive as we wanted. They'd help us to find the right spot and help us if we got stuck. Now this one they actually made more challenging on purpose.
There we go, a little tire off the ground.
Yeah, having us approach this from from this side, so we're going down the passenger side, meant the driver couldn't see what they were driving down, which makes it a lot more intense. And it was pretty steep. You could see all the Broncos were lifting a wheel as they went through. He'd have us put it in, we'd go into manual transmission mode, first gear, so we'd be able to engine brake down. Of course, we were in low range, but left the diffs open, and then just kind of turn into this hill, which if you could drive straight down the hill, it wouldn't have been so bad, but when you turn like that, pick up the back tire.
It's a little bit of a pucker moment.
A little bit of a pucker moment. It was pretty exciting. I'm not convinced I would have done that if I was out there alone.
Well, here we go. We're going to get out and open up a little bit and see what the Broncos got.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, they let us go out on this. They called it the Roadrunner Trail. And they said, you know, put it in Baja mode or sand mode, mess around with whether you want to lock the axles or not, and see how well you can get through this trail. It's really twisty. It's a little bit rutted, but in the direction that you'd be going, and a little loose gravel. The biggest problem we had with it was the dust. If you got too close to the person in front of you, you couldn't see where you're going. But you could just, you know, put her to the boards and see how well it went. And you know, though we spent the whole day driving it like 5 miles an hour or less, so it's pretty exciting at the end to be able to just let her rip and open it up.
Yeah, and I gotta imagine this is where you really get to see that Bronco shine with that independent front end. Handles this a lot better than my Jeep would have, I have a feeling.
Yeah, it definitely soaked up the bumps pretty good. You know, the low tire pressure doesn't hurt. The independent front doesn't hurt. The last curve you could kind of see I went over the turn a little bit because I had the rear axle locked, and so you know that helped me get off the line good, but didn't necessarily help me turn quite as tight. You know, we got to go around this 3 times, and it's a fairly big course, so by the 3rd time we were starting to get a little bit more comfortable. But you know, there's a lot of twists and turns, so you kind of can't go as fast as I'd like to, just because you're not sure where you're going next. You know, how tight is the next turn? And they made it really tight just to make sure people didn't get going too fast.
Yep. So how long was this day total when you got there to the time you left and lunch and all that fun stuff?
You know, we probably left after about 8 hours. We got a pretty solid 5 hours of driving time in, plus you know eating and some instruction time. So it was about 8 hours that we were there. We could have hung around longer at the end of the day, but we just hopped on one of the shuttle buses to go back to the hotel because we had to leave early the next morning. But you know, this was completely unexpected. When you say, hey, we've got a bunch of unknown drivers that are coming out here, all we know is that they bought a Bronco and they've got a driver's license, and you put them in a truck and say, yeah, see how fast you can drive through this, have fun. That I didn't expect. I certainly wouldn't do that to somebody with my Bronco.
No. Did you have anyone in the group that had any breakdowns or any mishap for parts?
No issues. We had it all. They had a couple stories of people getting stuck pretty bad, but we never had anybody who couldn't drive out. This end is kind of fun because there was a big ramp there, but they said make sure you don't jump it because there's a tree branch that you'll hit.
Look at the highways right there too.
And I think they want you to slow down for the highway. So that was the end of the video that we took, but it was a pretty fun event. We really enjoyed it.
Looks like it was a really good time.
Yeah, I'd love to go back.